As mentioned, I'll show you a figure. I mean, we believe there's a high percentage of women being pressured or coerced into abortions is actually pretty high. But again, politically, we don't have to prove that's high number. A very small number is still worthy of protecting. You know, basically the idea that every abortion, setting aside the moral issues, every abortion should be freely wanted. It should be beneficial to women, right? There's less argument against if freely wanted beneficial abortion. The problem is the abortion industry has no evidence of any benefits, and they actually make more profit off forced abortions because that's the big bulk of their income. But again, we don't have to prove that Planned Parenthood is cooperating in coerced abortions. We simply have to, in fact, they'll say, oh, we do screening, we don't do coerced abortions. Well, we should still have laws to make sure all the other abortion clinics license that they're the same high standard of care. So we don't have to prove that all abortions are coerced or that's even very common. But let me give you some statistics. The problem isn't that unwanted children, like the other society wants to say. A big problem is unwanted abortions. They don't even ask these questions in abortion clinics anymore. When they do surveys, or at least they don't publish it, but back in the 70s, when they did do some in-clinic surveys, 70–80% of women were saying that they would rather have the baby if it had been supported by others. Okay? So the lack of support is one of the biggest reasons for abortion. The other thing is that 70% of women believe abortion is immoral. Okay? If you look at the abortion surveys, which we already saw, over half the people believe that abortion should be severely restricted. Okay? If you ask other questions like, do you believe abortion takes a life, you're going to get more like 80–90%, right? So a person's opinion on the legality of abortion doesn't necessarily give you clear insight into their views. Personally, if I had an abortion, would I feel it was right or wrong? Okay? And again, about situations. So a person who, I forget who was one of the leaders of one of the pro-abortion groups at one point said, you know, everyone's opposed to abortion except for personal reasons, which is a wrong concept in their own situation. I mean, once you're in the situation, then suddenly your evaluation of abortion may shift around. In any case, the bottom line is most women in the abortion clinic are acting against their conscience. Some part of them thinks this is morally wrong, but I'm sacrificing my conscience because I lose my boyfriend, my husband, my family's respect, my career, whatever the trade-off is, they feel like, well, one teenage girl, she was a cheerleader, she was the good girl in the family, everything, and she became pregnant. She said that she had the abortion because she thought it would be easier to live with the shame of the abortion, the shame of telling her parents that she was pregnant. Okay? So, that was her trade-off. And as she discovered, you know, we all, when we steal a cookie, or we lie to the IRS, or even we have an affair, those things are sins that affect us, but we kind of can live with them maybe. But an abortion goes deep, deep to the heart of your self-identity and self-worth, and your identification as a moral person, or immoral person, as a mother, or someone who's not a mother, or father who forces somebody to have an abortion. So abortion is, I'm saying, is one of the most profound sins that we can be engaged in. Okay, has deeper effects than some. So some people going into an abortion think, I guess what I'm trying to say is, some people, as they approach an abortion, thinking, well, I was messing around and I knew that was wrong. So having an abortion is just, you know, I can kind of not feel too guilty about it. But they discover that it's much more profoundly guilty than they thought. So again, there are situational pressures and interpersonal pressures. Situationally, about 53% of women in this particular survey is from women who were both turned into auto mode, and something he said. 53% originally felt happy about pregnancy. About 64% were feeling forced by circumstances. So that specific question was, did you feel forced by circumstances? Okay, which can include things like their own income status, or that they were recently divorced, or whatever the circumstances is that makes them feel that abortion is their only choice. And I would emphasize only choice. The whole idea of this being pro-choice, sometimes the personal and situation factors make women frequently feel they have no choice. And that's again where the abortion counselors and certainly we go to pregnancy centers trying to identify how you give women choices is a big part of what kind of resources, what kind of support, emotional, financial, legal will help them to have their baby. 80% would have chosen to give birth to support by others to do so. 64% felt pressure from others, and 54% felt forced by others. So there's no difference between pressure and force, right? Coercion. And it's very subtle. There are many different kinds of people who can be involved in pressure. Obviously, on the left column, I have more family-oriented people. You get the male partner, parents, siblings, friends, the partner's family, okay? The mother of the boyfriend who says, oh no, you have to have an abortion. The sexual exploiter, incest or rape, or sex trafficker. Actually, to give you a quick example of a young girl who wrote, I was the victim of incest. In spite of the pain and guilt I felt, it was far better to have a baby than the alternative. They killed it. I refused to have an abortion. My father flew into an uncontrollable rage and demanded that I consent to the abortion. In this case, the first doctor he went to refused to do the abortion because she was saying, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. So her father contacted local abortionists who came in, and the story continues. The doctor asked 3 nurses to hold me down while he strapped me to the bed. I continued to scream that I didn't want to have the abortion. He told me to shut up and quit that yelling. I was violated by my father, and was violated again by the abortionists. So she went through a forced abortion, and I don't have full testimony here, but she goes on later to say how she lives with this deep guilt that she didn't fight hard enough to protect the baby. So even in a forced abortion, the self-blame that, somehow I could have done something more to stop. And she would, again, she was a victim of incest. But the violators, of course, used abortion to cover it up. And even in this case, clearly the abortion provider, he felt he was legally covered because the father signed consent for him, so he could do it either way, because there's no liability. Doctors sometimes are pressured to have an abortion. For example, the doctor said that the medicine he had prescribed causes birth defects. He was very concerned about my decision not to have an abortion and literally pleaded with me, please reconsider. There are so many dangers. You're a fool to think of not aborting. I suspected he was afraid I'd sue him if the baby had birth defects. My decision came from the seed of the doctor implanted that I should have that abortion. It was so serious that it frightened me. So, medical profession, sometimes especially if they fear any kind of liability, abortion is now the legal way to avoid that liability. Abortion clinic staff. And I can touch on that later, but here's another example, I guess, first. She told us it would be very difficult for us to have a baby. She said, this is the counselor that she's referring to. She said that she had 3 kids herself, and the financial aspect was difficult for her. She never gave me alternatives or asked if I wanted to keep a baby. She just kept playing on my fears and making me believe that it would never work out. Some abortion clinic staff are paid a bonus per head. So they have a financial incentive to encourage the abortion. Some are trained to identify what the fears are. If it's the boyfriend or whatever, and to just keep hitting poking those fears if there's any hesitancy. Some abortion clinic staff are themselves supportive. They've had abortions themselves. Sometimes they didn't have a very pleasant abortion experience, and they go to work in an abortion clinic for a couple of reasons. One, because they think maybe I can help somebody else to do that. So there could be kind of a passion side. They're hoping maybe I can help others. But also, they're surrounding themselves then with other people who are supporting abortion, and that reaffirms the rightness of their own abortion decision. And every time a woman chooses to have an abortion, that reaffirms again that I made the right decision too. So they're living in a little cocoon of affirmation that my decision was right, my decision was okay. In fact, there's testimonies of when a woman decides not to have an abortion on some leaves in the clinic. As this one writer kind of put it, working in abortion clinic, that's almost literally a gasp for the abortion clinic of, oh, she escaped. Hey, that could escape. So, to a certain degree, the courage of somebody who leaves the abortion clinic echoes and maybe reverberates. The point is that abortion clinic staff are not immune to having others, financial, also the population control mentality. The whole, there's too many people in the world, and especially if this woman is seen as too young, or poor, or mentally unstable, or whatever, you're probably not a good mother. Therefore, they may not say this, but internally they think this woman would be a good mother, so encouraging her to have abortion is doing the whole world a favor, right? Because we don't want this woman bringing a child into the world that's going to be raised by this woman. So there's a lot of kind of that mentality that fits in it. One abortion clinic worker wrote that when she had a teenager come in who says, I don't want to have an abortion, but my parents want me to have an abortion, that she would say to the teenager, well, do you know how much it would cost to raise a child today? $500,000 or whatever, $1 million, whatever the numbers are that they come up with. Do you have that kind of money? Well, no. Don't you think you'd be a better parent if you waited to finish college and you had a job and you were married and you settled down? Would you be a better parent then? Maybe. Don't you think it's unfair for you to expect your parents to help out or your boyfriend to quit school and take care of you? I don't know. So you hear a litany of despair where she's being torn down in her self-esteem. You'd be a better parent if you waited. You're not good enough to be a parent now. You can't afford it. You're a burden on everybody else expecting them to help you take care of this child. So this clinic counselor is literally saying, this is how I manipulate her into, instead of, which I think you would agree, in a conscientious society where even if you thought there's nothing wrong with moral abortion and stuff, but if your concern is helping this girl achieve her own personal needs and desires, if she's saying, I'd rather have this baby, but my parents are pushing it, shouldn't you go talk to the parents and say, wait a minute, you shouldn't push your daughter to have an abortion? Because all the studies show that if you push somebody to have an abortion, she's more likely to be engaged in substance abuse, get pregnant again later, maybe become promiscuous, maybe have multiple abortions, or maybe have a child out of wedlock, or certainly you're going to create a divide between you and her that may be irreparable. Unless that abortion counselor, I guess, should be taking advocacy for what the girl, which is the way to convince her parents that I want to have this baby. But instead, the counselor gets on the side of the ones pushing for the abortion and starts trying to say they're the rational ones. You're being selfish if you resist this rational decision to have this abortion. Because that's the bottom line is, in most cases, abortion is a rational decision in the sense of it's supposedly your life goes on the way it's supposed to go. But the heart and the spirit, there's a connection there. You cannot break that off. And again, I'll talk about that more later. But the bottom line is, if you just want to argue about the economics, says economically makes sense to have abortion. Stepping back, here's why I kind of want to ask so many thoughts in my head. But those parents pushing for the abortion, I'm upset with them for pushing for the abortion. On the other hand, I have empathy for them buying into the lie, the cultural lie that abortion is the choice between having a baby or not having a baby. And that having an abortion is simply turning the clock back. Your daughter's life would go on the way it was. Because the parents of the pregnant 15-year-old are thinking, oh, but this will prevent her from school. All the dreams we have for her will be thrown out a kilter if she has this baby. So they're buying into the lie that abortion simply turns the clock back and she'll go on life like it was before. But an abortion decision is a choice between having a baby or having an abortion. It doesn't turn out, it's not that. You have lost a child now, you're already a mother. The question is, are you going to be the mother of a living child or a dead child? How are you going to cope with it? How are you going to integrate that to the rest of your life? And so, like I said, I have empathy for these parents who are not told by the abortion counselor, this will profound. Your daughter's life is already profoundly changed. Once she's pregnant, her life is already profoundly changed. It's a question of whether or not she's going to have this child, if she's for adoption, or if she's going to have an abortion, and how the abortion is going to impact her. But the lie that abortion doesn't impact her, that's the lie, right? And the suicide rates, all the stuff we'll be talking about later this afternoon, that's the lie. Well, other kinds of pressures can come from employers, landlords. I can give you other testimonies, but I don't want to use up too much time. And I'll show you later how you download a bunch of this information. Welfare caseworker, I think I got that one again here. This one wrote, since my husband was unable to find another job, he had to go on welfare. When our caseworker found out that I was pregnant with the third child, she was just disgusted with us. She urged us to have an abortion, saying, you can't just go around having babies all the rest of your life. After making us feel like dirt, she assured us that Medicaid would pay for the abortion. From that point on, there was pressure from everyone around me to have the abortion. The only one who didn't want me to do it was my mother-in-law, who was herself a survivor of a failed abortion attempt. Confusion mounted, tension and pressure to control, and I became another victim of free choice. Sometimes religious leaders, or any authority figure. On the religious leader side, there's an important testimony I have of a young woman who had been pregnant, and she was been a victim of a lot of family dynamics and abuse and whatever, and she didn't want to tell her mother because she knew her mother before she had an abortion. So she was walking around on the street thinking, I need to find a church. She never really been to church, but she figured that, maybe it's somebody in the church can help. Just this idea that, church people are against abortion to help. So she goes in, she finds what looks like the prettiest church, she goes into it, talks to the pastor, tells her she's pregnant, and she's like 15, and he reaches into the drawer, pulls out some money, gives her a few $100, and says, here, that'll help. As she writes, she says, I'm a teenager. I pretend like I understand. I don't understand. She's wondering, what's this about? So she walks out with money, and she's walking out the street, she realizes he wants to have an abortion. This is money for an abortion. And as she goes down to the pier, she sits on the pier, she's wiggling her legs, and she starts saying, I'm sorry, but God wants me to have an abortion. I always wanted to have to, but this isn't, going to happen. So she went ahead and had an abortion. 20 or 30 years later, when she's in post-abortion counseling, she begins to realize all these things, but most importantly, she's able to distance herself and have empathy for my poor, young, 15-year-old girl on that board who misunderstood or didn't have the courage, or but she was able to, again, like I said, realize that's a different person then. I'm a different person now. And she's able to forgive herself and have empathy that, sometimes we make stupid decisions or we feel we have no choice. So different types of pressure, there can be threat, loss of relationship. If you don't have an abortion, I'm going to leave you. Loss of respect, the fear that the parents are going to, lose respect, loss of financial support. One woman, I think she was young at the time, she was like 15 years old, told her mother she was pregnant, but she wasn't going to have an abortion because she believed it was morally wrong. But she says her mother changed her mind with 4 words. Where will you live? It's something you told you're going to be off on your own. You're that age. What are you going to do? Right? Misinformation, especially from abortion clinics, they give false information. Threats and acts of violence. In this abortion report, which I'll give you details on the download, the leading cause of death among pregnant women. Did anybody know this? You should know it. Leading cause of death among pregnant women? Homicide. Homicide. All the research shows that the leading cause of death in pregnant women is homicide. Because if coerced abortion, if the woman refuses coerced abortion, it can escalate to beatings, threats, harassment, and sometimes murder, sometimes murder policy. We got over 50 in the special report on the 50 documented cases of, there's far more, of people being prosecuted for murder precisely to just prevent, because they didn't want to be a father. Black male. As I mentioned earlier, that there's going to be abortion clinics can side with coercers. They can side with abusers. They turn a blind eye to incest and rape cases. As she mentioned earlier, when somebody comes in with somebody in an abortion clinic, very often they're there to just make sure she does what they're supposed to do, have that abortion. In fact, a testimony to a legislator, one of those guards at the abortion clinic said that the greatest threat to the women was the male partner who was there to make sure she had the abortion, whether she wanted it or not. Abortion clinic coercion includes false representation, siding with the abusers, withholding information, willful disregard for risk factors. For example, the risk factor of coercion. They know, even the American Psychological Association has identified that feeling, as they worded, a perception of being pressured by others is a risk factor for having psychological problems after abortion. So even if it's not objective, maybe that person would be supportive if they knew she really wanted to the baby, but just the perception of being pressured is itself a risk factor, much less any of these real kinds of pressures. But the abortion clinics don't screen for this, okay? Because they face no liability for it. Now, this is to touch a little bit about the coercion bills, which I think is great that you have coercion bills in Massachusetts. But the problem with the coercion bills that have been formulated by pro-life groups that generally they propose to sign, they ban you from, telling you that's illegal for people to coerce you into it. But if somebody's a successful coercer, you're not going to stand up against that coercion because it's so powerful. Bottom line, in my view, is it has to be liability. The abortion clinics should face liability for not doing proper screening and counseling. And if they do a coerced abortion, they should face, liability for not only psychological risk, but for the wrong of the child. But anyway, right now they face no liability, and that's what they are okay with. So as I said, abortion is the leading cause of death for pregnant women. And studies of battered women reveal that when they're pregnant, the focused battery often shifts to hitting the abdomen. In some cases, there was one of these cases where a man literally took his girlfriend who wanted to have a baby, but he started hitting her with a baseball bat on the belly, trying to kill a child. That's sadly not that uncommon. I would like to argue that the abortion mindset itself fosters abuse and murder. We live in a culture that says abortion is legal. If it's legal, then supposedly it's safe, supposedly it's moral, which means that if she could have an abortion, from the mindset of a man who doesn't want to have a baby, well, you could have, and since it's in a position on me, you should have an abortion, right? That distinction between could have and should have is kind of thin when you're all wrapped up in how it affects me. See, abortion is the one surgery that affects a lot of other people, right? Because there's a new life coming into the world, and that new life is new relationships to parents, grandparents, to husband, other. So abortion is really a social thing. Let me say pregnancy is a social thing, right? It involves two people to get pregnant, and a community to raise a child, and family members who have relationships. And because of that social connections that it involves, as we mentioned earlier, the Supreme Court is assuming that abortion simply is for what a woman wants it better than somebody else, but it's a two-edged sword. The easier you make it have an abortion, the easier you make it to push women into unwanted abortions, right? In fact, because it's legal and presumably safe, it's harder for that woman to argue against having an abortion because her parents or boyfriends are, it used to be when it was illegal, she could say, well, that's illegal. It's dangerous. It's wrong. As soon as we legalize it, we take those three arguments away from her. Now all she can say is, but I want to have this baby. Or I don't feel right about this. Well, that's multiple arguments. There's logic, well, so we weaken her defense against being pressured into abortion because we have said as a culture it's legal, it's safe, and most women benefit from it. That's the presumption. So for the abuser, the person in that mindset of well, I don't want to have this baby, that potential abusers, I would like to assume that these men don't start out wanting to be abusers, but as the pregnancy progresses, and their first indication, well, I really don't want to have a baby, it's just like life, I think I want to have it. Then they're like, well, think about it a little more. Gosh, I'm not going to have to be financially supported, or, hey, you were just supposed to be a little fling, I wasn't really committed to you. All these things, obviously the tensions that turn these men into abusers build over time. And like I said, some of it begins, verbal abuse, then some physical abuse, then outright murders is happening in some places. The same abortion mindset fosters sexual abuse and incest. Again, young teenage girls coming in with older men, and often by the fathers, or even the mothers trying to cover up incest. It's very common, but the abortion clinics don't even inquire about incest or statutory rape because they don't want to know, because they don't want to report it. They just want to do the abortion. In one of our surveys, we found that only 25% said they felt completely free to choose either way. So only 1 in 4 felt they had the resources, they could have a baby if they wanted to, they had the support if they wanted to have a baby. I think that's an important kind of distinction between the circumstantial and the interpersonal pressures of work. That only 1 in 4 women in this sample said if they wanted to have a baby, they could have comfortably decided to do that, but they were aborting simply for their own reasons. At the abortion clinic, Mark polls found that 40% said they were still looking for options when they came to the abortion clinic. Sometimes they were hoping the counselor, when they talk to the counselor, maybe they'll show me a way, how do I get out of this without having an abortion? But they didn't realize that once you get to the abortion clinic, the presumption is once you walk in the door, you've already made the decision to have an abortion. And they're actually, philosophically, they're just trying to make it the easiest possible for you to get through that day because it can be difficult. So they want to give you as little information as possible. They don't want to challenge your decision because they don't want you to have second thoughts. They just want to help you get through the abortion. It's their mindset. And so, given that, let's rush through it. 81% felt rushed in making the decision. 54% were this is the difference. Well, 54% were unsure of their decision. Yet 67% received no counseling beforehand. Before they got to the abortion clinic, they had no counseling, no help in making a decision. 84% claimed that they were inadequately counseled. As I mentioned, most abortion clinics do not believe that they have the job of providing decision-making counseling. They don't help you review the reasons for the decision. They figure as soon as you walk in the door, you've already made your decision. And that's their policy, but it's not according to this, again, it doesn't fit in with, as I'll talk about later, what even the Supreme Court anticipated. Abortion clinic bias could be exaggerated by clinicians, as I mentioned before, self-affirmation. If a woman who's doing counseling has had an abortion herself, there's some comfort in seeing others make the same choice. Bias against what they perceive as unfit mothers. Having a population control or environmentalist attitude that the fewer children born in the world, the better. And if this woman is inclined to have abortion, that's good for society. That's much more taking the side of those pushing for abortions. So legalizing abortion, as I mentioned earlier, makes it harder for her to say that it's immoral or it's unsafe or that might not be a good solution because the presumption of society is why not do this? And again, so the guy pressuring for abortion is like, why not do this? Because he has been exposed to realizing all I'm going to show you later. Now, if you sign up for our email list at afterabortion.org, we'll send you a link, maybe included as a 26-page report on forced abortions in America. It includes the 50 case studies, it's got some testimonies of the women, it's got some of these statistics. So you don't have to write all these things down, but that's a good report. There's also a sort of abbreviated report, so maybe one that was in your packet. Behind the green sheet in my packet, at least, there's a lot of things from the Eliot Institute, which you can use later. So we got about 5 more minutes here to end schedule. Included in that is numerous fact sheets, information on the coercion, teens at risk, case studies of violence and homicide.
If you also go to the unchoice.com/resources HTML, or you can just go to unchoice.com and you'll find resources. We have a lot of fact sheets and other things that would be helpful for that. So that's my presentation focusing on the coerced abortion aspect. And as I said, I encourage you, especially in light of this legislation that you have dealing with coerced abortions, to me that is obviously an area where it's very difficult for the other side to argue why they don't want to cooperate screening for coercion. The reason they don't is because, as I said, in fact, they make a lot of money off coerced abortions. And from a population control viewpoint, you're reducing, again, anybody who walks into that clinic is already presumptively probably not good enough mother to be raising this child in the first place, right? Whatever situations are. So their attitude is, unless you're in a perfect situation to bring a child into the world, abortion is the good solution. Especially if you come from a zero population growth or negative population growth mindset, the global warming thing. Every child is going to producing knows how much carbon pollution in the world. So we do have ideological hurdles to face with many people who have this mindset. If she comes in abortion clinic, she should have abortion. In terms of the public debate, they don't want to argue that way. And we can press them in the sense of every abortion should be a free abortion. And financially, it should be freely chosen. No woman should ever feel forced, or for lack of resources, or lack of support from other people, that she has to have an abortion. And it's really up to the abortion clinics to do proper screening to identify cases of coercion and to prevent them and be legally liable by that woman if they fail to protect her from an unwanted abortion. So I think that, that's, and I'll talk about that later on. I have the luxury of boring you for another hour later on.
When I first started giving talks, I would torture people with a little amateur humor. And so now I'm torturing people with a little amateur poetry instead. Or something like this. I call this questions. Why does God allow the night to come so the stars may shine more brightly? Why does God allow the floods to rage so the valley will again be fertile? Why does God allow the fire to burn so the forge may give birth to steel? Why does God allow the evil to rule so the chosen may become more holy? Why does God allow the grief to last so the fallen may seek out his mercy? Why does God allow the grief to last? We wonder sometimes, rightly, why does this abortion tragedy go on and on and on? But it's because through broken souls that we turn back to discover Christ. And in a culture that needs spiritual renewal, ironically, it's allowing that culture to delve into the depths of destruction and loss, bad choices, that we turn back and realize, why did it go this way? And the dropping in abortion rates, as we indicated earlier, I think is one of those signs that more and more women and men and families who've been through the abortion experience once before are telling future generations, don't go back this way again. In many respects, what I'm going to be talking to you about today is just the idea that the whole post-abortion issue, broadly speaking, is the key to ending abortion, the key to changing our culture, the key to creating a society where abortion is truly unthinkable. A society in the future, which when a young woman says, pregnant, maybe I need to have an abortion, everybody understands that's a statement of despair. It's a statement, I'm not getting the support, I'm not getting the love, I'm not sure what to do. And people know to rally around her instead of encouraging her to have an abortion. Because they know that having an abortion not only takes life, but also it will hurt you. Don't do this to yourself. We will hear it like we would hear a young person who says words that sound suicidal, that we don't give them a gun or pills to kill themselves. We rally around and realize this person's in a desperate situation. So that's what our goal is, to create a society where abortion is really unthinkable. As somebody talking about abortion, you hear those words as a sign of despair and somebody needing help to avoid an abortion rather than go through it. Well, many of you have taken Speech 101 in high school or college, and you know the first lesson in Speech 101 is know your audience, right? So I want to talk about the 4 different audiences regarding the abortion issue. I'll start right off saying it can be 2 things at once here. And I define these a little different than most people have heard. But so pro-life, everybody here is pro-life, right? Because our heart's concerned for the baby. And in our mind, we believe abortion is immoral. It's an act against God's law. Someone who's anti-abortion, say I'm pro-life and I'm anti-abortion. As an anti-abortion, setting aside the moral issue, I believe abortion is dangerous to women. And my heart is on the woman. So I can be simultaneously pro-life and anti-abortion at the same time. I'm concerned both about the death of the unborn child, but also just as deeply about what women go through after abortion. Okay? The third group is pro-choice people. People who are legitimately pro-choice, believe the lie that abortion helps women. And their heart is fixed on the women. Perhaps they have a loved one in their family who's been involved in abortion, and they've been involved in helping a loved one have an abortion. And they really want to think and believe that abortion is helping women. So for them, it's a pragmatic decision. Many of these people are pro-choice, as they talk about the mushy middle. They are uncomfortable with the fact that abortion kills a human life. They don't deny that it's alive, but it's not quite as alive as this woman that I'm caring about right now. And so if I have to choose, if you put me in a different position, they buy the lie that you have to choose between one or the other. They decide I'm the side of the woman. Okay? The fourth group is the pro-abortionists. They see abortion as a social engineering tool, a way to control the quality and quantity of people born into the world. The abortion movement, if you didn't know, really came out of the eugenics movement. And Margaret Sanger's involvement early on in the eugenics movement is less from the fit, more from the fit, less from the unfit. And the poor and people from Southern and Eastern Europeans and Ireland, those who have to be mostly Catholic especially, were considered unfit back at that time. And so the social engineers see abortion as a tool for creating a man-made utopia. Most of these pro-abortion utopians don't believe in God. They believe that it's up to us to make the best world we can. And if you have an engineering mindset, you want to control the quantity and quality of people who come into the world in order to make a better world. So, eugenic abortion for people who have, just recently, in Denmark, there's only 3 children born with Down syndrome in the last year. So targeting of people with any genetic disability. Also, these utopians are the ones who are really into genetic engineering, creating designer babies and enhancing human beings. But anyway, so the difference is that the utopian, I guess maybe let's hit this next slide. Where's the overlap here? Pro-choicers and anti-abortionists have something to communicate about together. We both care about women. And as the pro-choice person learns that abortion is not helping women, or at least always helping women, like I said, they've hardened their hearts to the baby because they think abortion helps women. And I've seen this in people I know. When I start educating about how abortion is hurting women, their heart begins to thaw because wait a minute, if abortion is not helping women, why are we killing babies? They can tolerate killing babies, little tiny ones before they're too big, because at least it's helping women. So you shift their whole mindset. Now, the approach I'm talking about does not work with the utopians, because they really don't care about women. There can, breaking a few eggs along the way to carbon equality, getting rid of the population down or whatever. That's just part of this. And here, how do you tell the difference between somebody, because the pro-abortionists will pretend they're pro-choice, right? Here's a simple question to ask them. What do you think about the one-child policy in China, or forced abortions in China? If they defend it, then they're population control. They don't really care about the dignity and the desires of individual women in China, or men, families in China to have as many children as they want. They don't care about that, because they're making excuses for all the reasons why China needs population control. But somebody says, oh, that's wrong, they're really pro-choice. And again, someone who's truly pro-choice, first question is, well, can't we agree on legislation to protect women from coerced abortions? And they'll say, yeah. Okay? And we have polling data that kind of shows that. So, and again, the public, you don't see in the media stories about coerced abortions, right? But we have to keep raising it and pushing it because it is a weak point in the whole pro-abortion argument, is the fact that there are so many women who have forced abortions. Now, as I said earlier, we don't have to prove that it's a certain percentage. We have statistics that range anywhere from 30 to 65%. But even if it's only 5%, it's still something we should solve, right? We should never, no woman should be ever forced or compelled to undergo an abortion she doesn't want or goes against her best interest and is dangerous to her. So the other side has created this false dichotomy that you have to choose between one or the other. Are you going to choose for the woman's rights or are you going to choose for the rights of the fetus? And sometimes the pro-life movement has made a mistake of falling into that same argument, especially back in the 70s. We would sometimes argue, but the rights of life is more important than convenience of the woman, right? So we were kind of denigrating the convenience of women for the rights of life and child. But the proper answer is their rights are intertwined, their well-being is intertwined. God has designed woman and child in such a way that you can't help one without helping the other. You can't hurt one without hurting the other. Abortion is innately harmful to women because her body physically is designed to protect the baby, and her spirit and her mind are designed to bond with that baby from the earliest. And so these are the reasons that we have to resist the dichotomy that's choosing between one or other. We're choosing for both before an abortion and after abortion. Even after abortion, we're not abandoning women. We have to overcome the stereotype that we're the judgmental, hateful ones who are judging women and saying they ought to go to hell. This is simply not true. We're there to try to provide healing afterwards and support afterwards. So we talked earlier this morning about the coercion that faces women and reasons for it. Now I'm going to move on to some of the statistics on the impact of abortion on women, mostly women, but also men and women and families. Because of course, if women are having problems, it's going to affect everybody else in their family. So the reproductive problems. There's evidence of doubling the risk of miscarriage, 8-fold higher risk of ectopic pregnancies, and certainly tons of studies. There's over 50 studies now, I believe, from multiple countries showing that abortion increases the risk of preterm and low birth weight deliveries. This last line, the 1.2 billion per year, that was a study that looked at basically abortion accounts for almost a doubling of these preterm births and low birth weight babies, and the cost of getting that number of extra children out of the hospital, just that first few weeks or months, is 1.2 billion per year. Divide that by the number of abortions, and each abortion is costing us an extra $1,000 in preterm delivery care. And that doesn't include if they have cerebral palsy or other things that are lifelong hardships and expenses, okay? So it's a real financial cost to the country. And again, March of Dimes tries to pretend we don't know why there's an increase in preterm deliveries. But the evidence is all out there. They just don't want to call attention to it. But there's also research from multiple sources, again, showing that there's a general decline in good health among women who have abortions. They're more likely to seek medical care more frequently, and more frequently also for psychosocial problems. They have more problems related to pregnancies. As mentioned, somebody was asking earlier about the forced dilation, and she was talking about laminaria, and she wasn't certain what these. There's both, but especially the circuit rider abortionists who fly from one city to another to do abortions for a couple days, like in St. Louis or wherever. They're in and out. They're not going to mess around with laminaria. Laminaria usually requires they put in laminaria one day, and the woman comes back later, another day, or after the soft dilation from the laminaria. So usually it's a forced delivery, which is again why you have the increased preterm birth problem associated with abortion. So this particular study is from Finland, where the equivalent of CDC linked the medical records between all deliveries and abortions with their death certificates. And they found that the first year following a pregnancy outcome, women who gave birth had half the mortality rate of women who had not been pregnant. Whereas women who had abortions had almost double the mortality rate of women who had not been pregnant, and about 3.5 times the mortality rate of women who gave birth. So abortion is associated with an increased risk of death. All the claims that you hear from the other side that abortions, that childbirth is, abortion is 12 times safer than childbirth or whatever, you've heard that, right? That claim is based on reported number of deaths for childbirth compared to the reported number of deaths for abortion. They don't tell you there's no mechanism for reporting the number of deaths for abortion. So they're comparing apples to no reports, basically. The only number of reports is, when it's so flagrant and there's a lawsuit or something. But CDC, there's no really active record, even death certificates. There's not a place to record. There's not a code for abortion-related death. Okay? So the whole statistics, I've got whole reports you can cite on this. But what was unique about the Finland study is basically, it's always difficult to identify maternal deaths because you have to actually investigate to decide whether or not did the pregnancy actually contribute to the death or not. It takes a little bit of investigation. So a number of years ago, we suggested, well, instead of trying to do that, let's just look at any death that occurs after the pregnancy. So that's what they did in Finland. They basically looked at death records. They didn't look at the cause of death, or like they did later, but it was basically, they don't rely on the cause of death. They just link to pregnancies and say, was there a death within a year after the pregnancy? And they found, boom, it's way higher after abortion. Well, you start doing some more of that. You look at suicides, for example. You see that compared to birth, there's a 6.5-fold increased risk of death and suicide in the first year following an abortion. And obviously, we'll compare that to the no pregnancies over there. See? There's 3.5 times increased risk of abortion, or suicide, in the year following an abortion compared to women who have not been pregnant. So, strong evidence. Now, following this research in Finland, they instituted new post-abortion counseling programs that suggested that women should be screened and they should be counseling. It did result in a slight reduction in suicide rates, but they still have reported the same problem. So, Eliot Institute, we were able to obtain data from both California, Medicaid data, and also Denmark. So we did a study looking at all women in Denmark, and we saw this increased risk of death from suicide. Right? I'm not sure how this thing works here. It's supposed to be. I had a little point before, but anyway, the risk of death after abortion remains elevated for at least 10 years. That's what you're seeing in this chart. And we also were able to show that with each abortion, the risk of death increased. So this is a dose effect. So after one abortion, the risk of death increased about 50%. After 2 abortions, over 100%. And with 3 abortions or more, it almost tripled. So the dose effect is very strong, which is also underlies the causal nature of this, that it's a strong indication that abortion is a direct contributing cause to increased death rates.
David, question for you. Is that
Yes.
suicide predominantly or other causes?
It includes, so suicide is one of the chief issues. Accidents, which could be risk-taking behavior or suicide, or again, also drug abuse. Okay, people are more likely to get in accidents than drug abuse. Also homicide, but that's relatively small, but homicide is increased. But also, the study that we did in California, where we looked at a 6-year period, we also breast cancer, so that could be picking up some breast cancer. But over a 6-year period, we saw a statistically significant increased risk of death from cardiovascular disease. 5-fold higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease just in the 5 years. And why would that be? Because cardiovascular disease is stress-related, right? So the whole the dynamic between psychological health and physical health is very intertwined. So the predominant thing, obviously, I believe, is the psychological effects. So there's one overview that looked at 22 different studies, combined and found that there was 81% higher risk of subsequent mental health problems with any history of abortion, with combining these various studies with 155% increase in suicidal behaviors, alcohol and substance abuse, anxiety, depression. A lot of these things you can find online. Let me look at my pointer working again. I forget. It's one of these things supposed to be
Anyway, so I guess I can walk with this. Okay. So this chart shows a number of different studies looking at different symptoms: alcohol, marijuana, suicidal ideation. So these are different symptoms. But wherever you see this dot, so this dot right here is about 6-fold higher. Okay, so alcohol use was 6-fold higher where that dot is. This is the logarithmic scale, as you guys remember. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. That's 10-fold increases. This line right here says, given the size of that population study and everything else, that 95% of the time, this dot, if you repeat that study, would fall at least somewhere along this line. So studies with short lines, because they have larger population, there's more confidence. That confidence interval gets smaller because you get more and more confident that you're narrowing in on the right thing. So the important thing is this line right here. If abortion was producing any benefit to women, that dot should be on this side, and this whole line should be on this side. So whenever that line crosses here, like this, that's considered statistically insignificant, meaning that line, that dot could have been down here, so we're not sure, you shouldn't draw too many conclusions from a study that has a long line that crosses this one. A long line like this, even though it doesn't cross over here, it's still all over there, so it means, yeah, there's probably something going on there, but we don't know if it's a 10-fold increased risk or 4-fold. It could be anywhere along there. So that's kind of what these charts kind of indicate. But you'll see, there's only one dot on this whole thing that is to the left of this, which means that's the only study that indicates, well, maybe abortion has some benefit. But it crosses lines, so it's statistically insignificant. And most importantly, this study was done by Steinberg. So, very pro-abortionists, and they used selection methods to exclude women from that study who might have had coerced abortions, for example. So they deliberately said, well, if the woman reported later on that she wanted a baby, we're not going to count her. Or if she had a later term abortion, we're not going to count her. So they had to do things to try to make it look like there's a... Most of these studies that cross under are done by pro-abortionists who are quick to say, let's see this long line? That's not really a very good study, but they trumpet after they publish that, well, that proves that there's no problem, because otherwise we would have seen something. So in playing statistical games, just to claim that it's statistically insignificant for them is a victory, because they can't show any benefit. So they are trying hard, but anyways, bottom line is this chart demonstrates that the vast majority of studies are consistently showing a trend of all these risks being greater following abortion. Now, of these studies, we were the authors of 16 of these studies, which kind of put the other side on the defensive. And that's one reason that the APA did its report a few years ago trying to say, well, here's why all these studies have problems. Of course, every study has some problems in this stage. You can't do, in the pharmaceutical industry, they do double-blind studies where you don't know if you get the right drug or not, and they're just doing this. So you cannot do a study of abortion. You can't randomly impregnate 100 women, assign 50 to have abortions and 50 to carry a term, and then compare them. You can't do that. Therefore, every study has weaknesses. The APA's approach goes, let's have weaknesses, we're just going to assume that abortion is safe. That's their basic argument. So as part of their findings, they came, after they did their review, saying all these studies have weaknesses. Here's what their conclusion was that they gave to the press. There's no credible evidence that single elective abortion under unwanted pregnancy in and of itself causes mental health problems for adult women. Now, the press reported that as abortion doesn't hurt women, which is what that sentence was intended to do. But since they are trying to be semi-honest, at least you recognize that they put in a lot of qualifiers into that statement, right? And if we break down those qualifiers, that there's, well, look back up, there's no credible evidence, means there is evidence, which we just reviewed in this report, but we don't find it credible because we think each of these studies has some problems, okay? So they're not denying there's evidence. But more importantly, a single abortion, well, about half of women or half abortions are for women who've already had one abortion. So they're already admitting, we're talking about the minority women here. Okay? So among the minority women, they also say of an unwanted pregnancy, which means they're kind of acknowledging both if it's a wanted pregnancy, then it's problematic. And we know that 20 to 64% of women are aborting wanted pregnancies or, they're not feeling coercion. Adults, they emphasize adult women, which again, 15 to 30% of abortions are for minors. In and of itself, when they claim in and of itself, they're saying, one of the things is saying that, well, a lot of these women have pre-existing mental health issues. If they have a history of depression or something, they're blaming all the troubles on their history of depression. Oh, they're not going to assume that abortion should be making worse. They've not even studied it. We've asked many times. There was a study of a woman done by a woman in Denmark where she basically said, okay, she did a record linkage study, and she found that yes, women had abortions had a high rate of mental health problems following abortions, but they also had a higher rate of problems beforehand, and therefore that probably explains it all. And so we say, well, if that's the case, how about break down how many times they have mental health problems, how many times they go for treatment, or what the cost of treatment is after the abortion compared to beforehand? No, she doesn't want to bother doing that, which tells you right away. They don't want to dig into the details. They don't want to, and she didn't want to take it, well, just exclude the women that had no mental health problems, and let's just see, do they have any more mental health problems? No, we don't want to do that. So they only publish data that they can massage in a way that they can explain away. So they want to explain, basically it's called blame the victim. If the person had a problem, it's because of pre-existing issues, not because of the abortion, is basically their argument, but they don't want to actually test it. Elective abortions, again, a single elective abortion, they're basically acknowledging the APA's acknowledging that so-called therapeutic abortion because of suspected fetal defect, or because the woman is taking some medication, or even for her own mental issues. The evidence again shows that women have more problems after that than those who carry the term. So anyway, basically what the APA statement, going back to the original statement, is an admission is simply a claim that for the minority of women who fit a profile of low risk, there's no clear evidence that abortion is the sole cause of mental health problems. They didn't word it that way in the press, but that's what that statement actually meant to talk about minority women. Even the APA and others, another pro-choice researcher from New Zealand, he attempted to try to prove that we were wrong, that abortion wasn't causing problems, because he had women and men that he'd been following since childhood, where he interviewed these children every 2 years through adulthood. He thought, well, I have data to prove that abortion doesn't hurt women. And he looked at it and found out, oh, I guess Reardon and those people are right. And he went, and since he was a good scientist, he tried to publish it. He got all kinds of kickback, like, oh, you know, I'll publish this, you should be publishing that, which kind of irritated because he's used this Christchurch study. He's published tons of studies off this longitudinal study before, and he's like, what? I always get my studies published. So he got really kind of offended, but he did publish it, and he still says that he's a pro-choice atheist. He doesn't see anything wrong with abortion, but he published another review that basically said, look, there is no evidence of any measurable benefits of abortion to women, and there is evidence of risk. And it's kind of like, you know, women should be told that, and he's kind of one of the things that irritates him is the British law in New Zealand and Australia, a lot of the British colony law, abortion is only allowed when two physicians agree that it is in the psychosocial or health benefits of the woman. And he's basically saying, this has been a lie. Doctors are approving abortions based on some presumed benefit, but there's no benefit. And he's basically saying we should stop lying to approve abortions. He actually favors, we just allow women to have abortion whether it hurts them or not. You need to modify the law to let them choose it according to their own, but he just doesn't like that they continue to lie. Anyway, so here's my wonderful graphic. Abortion is a safety hazard, not a safety net. You know, on the other side, I say that, you know, women need a safety net in case they get pregnant, but they're not being told there's real risks. And so, my argument is that if we want to know the key to an abortion-free world, there's been two lies for abortion, right? That abortion doesn't destroy human life, that the fetus isn't a human or it's not a person yet or whatever, which they hardly argue anymore. You know, so that's the one lie. But the second lie is that abortion helps women. So if we reveal that lie, that abortion is simply bad medicine, that changes the whole dynamic of how you evaluate whether or not we want to allow abortion. As you know, population controllers are really pushing hard in developing countries that don't have legalized abortion. Well, you need to legalize it. They keep calling it safe abortion. You have to have safe abortion. And for them, the term safe abortion means legal abortion. But if we can demonstrate, and we have demonstrated, but we need to educate and help the people in those countries be educated on the fact that, look, all the evidence of the developed countries which have so-called safe abortion shows that women have more problems following abortion than carrying to term. And that's, and the shortcut, especially in the US, my view, is to make abortions fully liable for post-abortion complications. Because if they had to pay for the psychological damages, for the reproductive health problems, because right now the state is picking up that $1,000, or insurance companies are picking up just on the preterm birth alone. $1,000 per abortion is being picked up later else by some insurance company or the state when a child is born prematurely. Okay, so let me move on then to another theme. Understanding obstacles which prevent healing.
David, question.
Yes.
Has anybody ever thought about a class action lawsuit against Planned Parenthood by, say, survivors?
There has been some time ago. There was some talk of trying to do class action stuff that never really took off. And that was one of the things, like with the breast cancer thing. There's looking at. So there has been talk about that. As I said, a state which there was an attempt down in Mississippi, I believe, to pass law which required reporting of abortion complications by emergency room physicians, so that with the idea of eventually having enough cases to bring class action suits, or just have the state recover damages. It's kind of like smoking. Remember how the suits against cigarette makers always failed when they were brought by individuals, but when the states sued, say we need to recover the damages for paying for health care for people with lung cancer, that's where they won. Because when somebody else is saying, we're paying up the bill, it's predictable that these problems follow from cigarette smoking, you guys need to help pay that bill. Essentially, yes, there's a strong argument that for the state to recover damages for
Coercion or
providing the health care to clean up all these post-abortion problems might be a possibility. So anyway, let me just give you stepping back. I mean, we looked at a lot of statistics on psychological stuff. I want to give you just a couple subtle things, though. There's obviously depression, anxiety, sleep disorders. We found, one of our studies found in the first year following abortion, like a 3-fold increase in risk of sleep disorders. But anyway, but there's sometimes subtle things. And again, one of these things comes from a couple of women who only in post-abortion counseling did they realize that what we call connectors. This one woman reported that immediately after her abortion, the first place they went to eat was Taco Bell or a place like that. And so she didn't make the connection, but for years she ate any Mexican food. And it wasn't until she realized post-abortion counseling, oh, that's the first place I went to eat. And so the connection to it was a reminder. And so the whole post-traumatic stress disorder concept around abortion is that you have these intrusive memories that your mind wants to reconcile what's going on inside, but you don't want to reconcile it because it's too difficult, because if I have to actually face it, then I'm going to break down and cry. So there's avoidance behaviors, and avoiding things that stimulate the memory of the abortion is one of the signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. Similarly, another woman described how she only later on figured out that for years, when she was dating men, and they'd pull out credit cards, snap it on the table to pay for a dinner or something, she would just get this inside feeling like, what arrogant, he thinks he's so hot with this credit card. And she didn't know where this irrational feeling came from until she realized post-abortion counseling, that's how the abortion was paid for, the click of a credit card. So there's these little subtle things in which it can impact. Women who are struggling with past abortion, checkout counter at a store, she sees a woman coming through with pregnant or with a baby stroller, and she has these negative feelings about this fat cow with this little baby showing off. So her resentment towards women with children and who were pregnant is because she was never allowed to have her baby. Okay? So there's all kinds of little permutations in which this hidden hurting pain that you can't confront impacts how you relate with other people in subtle ways. So it's
it's a profound, it has profound effects everywhere, not just, in depression numbers or anxiety numbers or substance abuse. Every study, even the pro-abortionist studies where they try to massage the numbers, make them go away, they can't make the substance abuse problem go away. It's very strong that the substance abuse remains, is elevated following abortion because women are basically self-medicating. And that also increases during labor and pregnancy. So when they have a child they want to carry to term, they're more likely to use drugs, alcohol, or smoke, even though they know it's not a good idea, but they're trying to. Being pregnant with a baby they're about to deliver arouses unresolved feelings about past abortion often. So anyway, I want to talk now about the obstacles to post-abortion healing and our role as healers. And I want you to think about, for a moment, the trap that women and men are faced with when they are struggling with past abortion. Their first instinct will be to turn to a friend or family member who they see as pro-choice, right? Because they're afraid of the judgment of someone who's pro-life, right? Because they're already starting to judge themselves. Well, they turn to that person, and they try to say the right thing. They say, well, you did the right thing. You can always have another baby someday. It wasn't really a baby yet. Whatever they are saying, which is intended to comfort. And it will be heard as an intent to comfort, but basically she's looking for somebody to grieve with, right? Or he's looking for somebody to acknowledge their grief. Because we don't have wakes, we don't have funerals, we don't even have sympathy cards after abortion. But she's looking for somebody to grieve with, but instead she hears, you don't really have anything to grieve about because you made the right choice, because it wasn't really baby yet. So it's a very dissatisfying conversation. Talk to someone who's pro-choice, who's trying to comfort you, while you're both trying to deny that there's something to really grieve about. See the difficulty? But to turn to the person who will acknowledge you lost a baby, who perceives as pro-life, it might judge you for, your callousness in taking that baby's life, that's scary. That's why we need to wear our compassion on our sleeves. We need to help women get past this fear of talking about their past abortions. I mentioned earlier, I think, right? That we don't live in a culture where someone feels safe sitting down on a national TV show and saying, I had an abortion, I made a mistake, but I found healing in Project Rachel, and it's a great program out there, and I wish all would go out there and get it if they need it. They can't say that, they'd be crucified, or they'd be afraid that the audience wouldn't know how to respond. We need a culture where post-abortion healing, and the right to talk about your abortion grief, the right to be embraced and accepted that you have grief, it's okay to grieve. We're not there yet. So, I like to describe this as the spectrum of reactions where women can be on any stage of this spectrum of reactions in their post-abortion period of life. And I want to suggest, though, that you think of it not just about women who had abortions, but any personal sin of yourself. Say, for example, you've been involved in adultery, or some embezzlement, or something a little more than stealing a cookie out of the cookie jar when you were 5 years old. Okay? Something that actually brings self-blame. Begins with self-blame, you recognize, oh, that was wrong. Okay? Which means you're not vulnerable. So what happens when you're feeling self-blame? You're afraid that other people are going to blame you too. Somebody else is going to notice what you notice about yourself. That makes you defensive. You start putting up the ramparts, you start building a wall. Then maybe you pull off the bow and arrow, get ready to stand up on top of the wall. Somebody starts coming too close. You blame them for coming close. You blame them for not being there when you needed it. You blame them for telling you when you're growing up that you shouldn't be this way or that way or whatever. So the blame of others helps shift us away from self-examination of our self-blame and repentance, right? And that can turn into resentment towards others, anger, and even hatred. And I guarantee you right now, there are so many women out there who are activists on the pro-choice side who had abortions, who feel hateful to pro-lifers, right? Because you dare to judge me, you dare to think you know about it, you dare to grind my nose into a personal, private, hurtful part of my life where I made the best decision I could. Get the hell out of my face! Right? Isn't that the attitude? They feel we're just grinding their nose, just trying to show pictures of aborted babies. It's a pornography, right? It's hateful, you hateful, lying, bigot,
hypocrites. As one woman put it, it's easier to be angry at those who oppress and hurt and oppose abortion than to live in a society where everybody is fine with abortion. Then you have to just deal with it by yourself. So the ability to project out the anger is actually a defensive posture that gets away from self-reflection, because the only reason I'm feeling bad is because you people are making me feel bad. Okay? But again, Maggie Dean, she writes about this after her abortion, after observing an abortion clinic. She's like, it's actually easier to be angry at other people, because inside we all know it's still lingering there. I still have to deal with it. If society applauded, the church blessed it, and the money that society paid for it, there was no social opposition to it all, I'd still be struggling with it. Okay? So, women can at any time move up and down this different spectrum of reactions. And we need to remember that despair drives women towards abortion. The fear of losing something, friendship, life, career, some aspiration, the fear of losing that is what makes them have abortions. But that same despair can prevent them from seeking support, help, healing after abortion. Because despair is kind of the sin against hope, right? So what we need to be is ambassadors of hope. And we have to remember that shame is a two-edged weapon. Back in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s or whatever, when we used shame to keep people from being having sex outside of marriage, if people did have sex outside of marriage, that would drive maybe towards abortion, right? Because you're trying to cover up the shame. In our culture right now, when we speak out against abortion, we don't want to speak out against abortion in a way that it's shaming. Because if we shame people about having abortion, we keep them from coming forward and finding healing, right? Because if they're afraid to tell us that they've had abortion because of the fear of shame, as I said before, that's trap. So this is why, as a pro-life movement, as a church, we need to be really bold about, we've all made mistakes. We've all stepped into it. We've all done things that intellectually we think are wrong, but we're not going to throw stones at you. So that doesn't mean we have to say abortion is okay. We have to say that abortion is something that, there for the grace of God, go on. And I have friends, I have loved ones who had abortions, and I accept them, and I try to help them find healing. And that our emphasis is, again, we are wearing our passion on our sleeves. I think that is also being more authentically the Christians that we're called to be, because Jesus came not in the world to condemn us, but to save us, right? And so we've all made mistakes, and we need to become ambassadors of Christ first. I think as we do so, we will find that it produces a lot of difference. You guys remember St. Paul? He persecuted the church first, right? And I think you might agree, we don't know all the apostles' histories that well, but he was pretty tireless in his efforts following his persecution. He became an advocate for the church. He was the most tireless of, I like to think, I guess, most tireless of the apostles because he had a lot to make up for. And I think the same is true of the post-abortion women and men who become active in pro-life ministries. They're some of the most tireless warriors we have now because they've been there, they've done that, they hated it. Now they're trying to reach out to others and use every part of their experience to transform the world. And so as we help promote post-abortion healing, we're actually creating the vanguard, the troops, the people who will transform society. I remember back when, in the 70s, again, it was mentioned earlier, that we were afraid that as abortion culture, as it spreads, as more and more people become involved in abortion, it's going to be most impossible to turn back. But that thinking missed the spiritual insight that God allows the devil his hour because God's going to get his day. He allows this period of us being exposed to this tragedy of abortion because it can be transformative of our society. As more and more women and men have gone through that, and then find healing and the spiritual renewal. We talk about need for spiritual renewal in our country. Actually, the abortionists have been tilling the fields. There are so many broken souls that need healing, need to understand, and they need to hear from each of us that we don't do that. We're embracing you. We want to bring you Christ's mercy and healing. We want you to know that you're a good person. You know, the frightening thing is, that for the person who's having an abortion, is at some point being able to articulate the words, I killed my own child. Or horrible words to realize, I killed my own child. And to believe that God can forgive that is just impossible. It's the hard part forgiving yourself, right? How can God forgive you that? And this is one of the most startling things about our message is, look, if God allows you to kill your child, look, He already allowed us to kill His child, right? We're in His child on the cross. God's mercy is so vast that He will allow you to kill your own child if that's what it takes to get your attention to save your soul. And if you rejected the gift of life once, God offers you a second gift, a gift of healing, a gift of new life in your own spirit. So don't reject that gift. And I actually tried to argue with him a little bit that I don't deserve God's forgiveness. Well, that's the only thing you can do for God is accept His forgiveness. That's the one and only thing you can do for God is say, yes, Lord, I accept your mercy. Because I'll tell you, as long as you're holding on to excuses, you're saying I don't need the cross of Christ. Because I got my excuses, right? When we die, the first thing we want to say is mercy. I want mercy because my excuses are worthless, right? So all of us, everywhere in our lives, we want to cast aside our excuses and just say mercy, mercy. Anyway, so I'm going to give you, let me do this before I draw the slide this up here. Give you another example. This woman who said something real wonderful one time. So she had an abortion when she was in her younger years, and later on, when she had several children, her turning point came on Christmas Eve when she's looking at the presents that weren't under the tree for the child was aborted, and she was just filled with tears, and she's crying out and praying to the Lord. And she woke up the next morning feeling like God had finally touched her and kind of eased her pain. And a few months later, she decided, no, I think I should volunteer at a pregnancy center to help out because I can maybe use my experience to help other people avoid abortion. So she went to the pregnancy center. She told the director, the first person she told other than her husband about past abortion, she says, I think I can help. That's what the director said. I'm sure you can. I'd love to have you aboard. I want you to go through our post-abortion healing program. And she's like, why don't we each? I've already been healed. I've really, been praying about this, and I'm says, well, would you humor me and go through it? She says, okay.